first, let's start, well, not with the best team in the Pac-12 in 2022, but with the most popular and, well, team with the highest ceiling, I believe, in the Pac-12 in 2022, and that is USC. So the question isn't about Caleb Williams or even Miller Moss or Malachi Nelson behind him, but can USC's defense be good enough to get Caleb Williams to his first college football playoff? This is a man who took pains to say, as he was accepting the Heisman Trophy last year, that he really would rather be playing in the playoff than receiving the trophy. Now, if you actually want to cut this up, he probably would like to do both. And frankly, he would not be the first Lincoln Riley quarterback to accomplish both, right? Getting to the college football playoff and winning the Heisman Trophy. But that ain't no guarantee about winning a national championship. As an Oklahoma fan, you know I know this very well. But the potential of Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams to get to the playoff, I don't think is in any doubt. As a matter of fact, we're looking at a run on Lincoln Riley quarterbacks that is something like phenomenal. Like, it popped into my head that Dylan Raiola could end up at USC, and he is the best quarterback in the 2024 class, 5-star, which would mean that Lincoln Riley head coach Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Spencer Rattler, Tanner Mordecai, Chandler Morris, Caleb Williams, and now Malachi Nelson. And then it just feels potentially unfair if Dylan Raiola ended up in South Central LA. But defensively, they're going to have to hold up, and that's not something that they are, well, good at. What they are good at is tackles for loss and turnovers. Now, to Alex Grinch's credit, that is what he has always wanted out of his defense. He wants tackles for loss, and he wants you to be disruptive enough to make the offensive players put the ball on the ground. This is a man who became famous for commissioning a study that found 20 takeaways by the defense equates to 9 wins, no matter what the offense does in a given season. And as much as we were pulling our hair out about how USC was able to pull out these wins with these really opportunistic turnovers, they still kept getting them. And turnovers is an unpredictable statistic. That's why so many of us don't really talk about it as something you got to go get or something that you can even replicate. But somehow, some way, Alex Grinch has been able to do this. And a big reason as to why was last year they had an All-American in Tuli Pelotu, who led all of FBS with sacks, with 13.5 sacks last season. So really not as high as I thought it was going to be. But when you're looking at that dude coming off the end, you can understand why he was so good, so quick, could get around that offensive tackle so well. But for that defense to get better and achieve the heights that they want to, win the Pac-12 championship, make it to the college football playoff, they're going to need former #1 overall recruit Corey Foreman to come on, right? We are still waiting on this dude to break out in a truly meaningful way, and the talent is there. It's just about pulling it out. The same, I think, could be said about a Damani Jackson, who I think should ascend in 2023. Very excited about what he could do in that defensive backfield. But for me, the guy to really pay attention to this spring is Eric Gentry. And I know that's not going to see a whole hell of a lot out of Eric Gentry because he's coming off of an injury last year, but you get the point here in that he is 6'6", playing inside linebacker and was outstanding in that defense. It's a man with a 7'1" wingspan. I mean, if you want to call him a condor, you'd probably be right. In 11 games last year, he had 71 tackles, and that was ridiculous. And what I could think about when I was trying to comp Eric Gentry, I had to go straight to Isaiah Simmons at Clemson. And when you think about that, Isaiah Simmons was able to come off the edge, play linebacker, play safety, be a destroyer of worlds for Brent Venables in that defense. I look at Eric Gentry and I could see that guy being deployed in much the same manner, especially against a league that's probably going to be the deepest that we see in the Power 5 at quarterback. In Isaiah Simmons' last year at Clemson, that'd be his junior year, his redshirt junior year. At 6'4", 238, this is a man who had 104 tackles, 16.5 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 8 passes defended, 3 picks, and 2 forced fumbles. Eric Gentry, I dare you to do better, because if you do better, you put up those sorts of numbers, I have no doubt that USC could win the Pac-12 championship and play in a college football playoff for the first time in its history, which feels like I'm saying something that is controversial in that, but it's really not. It's just USC ain't been USC since Leinart, since Bush. You get the feeling there. All right. One guy to watch for, I think, on that USC defense going into the spring, though, is Jamil Muhammad, who is a transfer from Georgia State. Really interesting journey for this guy. Comes out of high school, expected to play quarterback at Vanderbilt. Ends up transferring to Georgia State, where he thought he was going to play quarterback. They move him to wideout, and eventually to what is essentially rush in. He had 7.5 sacks in 2 years at Georgia State. And when he entered the transfer portal, there were no small amount of Power 5 offers. We're talking about UNC, Ole Miss, Arkansas, and A&M before he ended up choosing USC. And one of the things that Riley and Grinch saw in him is one of the things that I see in him. This guy is still raw. It's still a guy that you could teach to be outstanding off the edge because he still doesn't know what he's really doing at that position. And it's not like Alex Grinch doesn't know how to develop outside linebackers and rush ins. To that point, Roy Manning can do the same. Their outside linebackers coach. And I'm really excited to see what Jamil can do. I also am really excited that his daddy's name is Shaft. Richard Roundtree. Shaft. He got a kid at USC. I don't know why that lights me up so much, but it does. Jamil Muhammad, come on down, because I think for USC, he could be for them what Jared Verse was at Florida State, right? He could be that good, and I expect him to show out and really add to the depth on that defense. All right, the next question I have in the Pac-12, my pressing questions this spring. Does Utah have depth behind Cam Rising at quarterback? Now, you'll know that this is tremendously important for Utah because he makes them go. They look like a totally different football team when he is their quarterback. And when he went out with injuries, back-to-back Rose Bowls, broken hearts all over, Utah's hopes of winning the Rose Bowl went with him. And he's also the reason they won back-to-back Pac-12 championships, all right? It is a man who will do whatever it takes, whatever he has to do to get wins, which is very Kyle Whittingham and frankly in their DNA. But behind him, we didn't see a whole hell of a lot, right? When it's going well, Andy Ludwig and Cam Rising will go up against USC, drop 90 points on their head, combine 1,000 yards, 1,095 yards of offense in back-to-back wins against USC. When it's going badly, we're trying to figure out whether or not Bryson Barnes, and Nate Johnson and Brandon Rose are good enough. And I think that's what the spring is about. As a matter of fact, I love this quote from Whittingham to the Salt Lake City Tribune. If there's a silver lining to Cam not being able to participate in the spring, it will be that those guys will get all the reps, not just the portion they would have gotten. That will lend itself to an opportunity for us as coaches to get a greater evaluation and sort out who our 2, 3, and 4s are by the end of spring ball. And that's the way that I would draw it up if I was running Utah. I think this is where you find out who's next up. Who can we expect to even come in and perhaps spell Cam Rising a little bit sooner in games that we expect to put away or games that we unexpectedly put away. And they've got some really outstanding and cool options, I think, here, because I'm looking at Bryson Barnes, who got most of the snaps in 2022 when Rising was out. We're talking about 57 career pass attempts in 11 games, but he's got a totally different skill set than Johnson and even Rose. Like, the cool thing about Nate Johnson is that he is so fast. This is a man who ran 10.4 seconds in the 100 meters in Clovis in high school in California. Just 10 seconds is still flying to me. You're 10.9, you're flying to me. You're 11 flat, you're flying to me. To know that you have that at quarterback and to see what you could perhaps build around that, I think should be exciting for a guy like Andy Ludwig, whose services, well, let's put it frank, were in demand after what he was able to do at Utah these last couple of years. Very excited to find out what the depth looks like and which one of these guys can pick up after Cam Rising, because I think this is going to be his last year of college football, but we're also going into another year for which we're going to see 6th and 7th year players. And we're coming off of the first year that we saw a 5-year starter at UCLA. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. My next question inside of the Pac-12 has to do with Oregon State. The question before me is, does DJ Uiagalelei look like the kind of quarterback that can win the conference championship? And there's several different ways actually to go at this, but I like to go at it from what he is adding to a 10-win Oregon State team that more or less won without a quarterback. All right. I know that we were all sort of out on DJ Uiagalelei as the starting quarterback at Clemson by the middle of November, but that was because he's got another 5-star behind him in Cade Klubnik that was able to clean it up, pick it up, and get Clemson back on the good foot for an 11-win season and a really great game against Tennessee in the Orange Bowl that they ended up losing. But even a season we thought was bad by DJ Uiagalelei standards was outstanding by Oregon State quarterback standards. The way I get at this is quite simply, Ben Goldberson and Chance Nolan played 15 games between them at Oregon State. They combined for 2,394 pass yards, 16 TDs, and 13 interceptions, right? Now, in that same season where we saw DJ Uiagalelei come off the bench and sit the bench, he also passed for 2,500 yards with 22 TDs and 7 interceptions. And 545 yards on the ground, which would have made him the third best running back, if you will, at Oregon State. And he had 7 rush TDs, which would have tied him for first on that Oregon State team. They, like Iowa in the Big Ten, feel like they're a quarterback away from being outstanding. Oregon State had USC on the ropes, right? This is a team that really came into its own in November, winning their rivalry game against Oregon in dramatic fashion. I think if he can show a command of the offense and really sell the rest of us on Oregon State and what we saw in 2022, that is how you get a deep league. Oregon State being good gives you 5 teams in that league that I really think could play in New Year's 6 bowl games if things break their way. They're really that good. Very excited to see what this dude looks like in the orange and black in Corvallis. Thank you for watching the #1 college football show. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so that you don't miss any of the best college football coverage in America.